With the release of Zenless Zone Zero version 1.4 and the massive overhauls that it has brought to the game, Hoyo vs. critically acclaimed Gooner Simulator has finally proven once and for all that it is not just any Gooner Simulator. It is a great Gooner Simulator. Okay, in all seriousness though, I'm glad that people are finally giving this game the proper attention that it deserved. After a launch that attracted many criticisms which pinned the game with monikers such as just an overly simplistic mouse one-spamming brainless battle sim, filled with over-animated childish graphics, and a game with a tendency to be attractive only to the degenerates of the internet, Zenless has gone above those claims and has proven its qualities in all the spots that it should have strengthened. And since 2025 is coming upon us, I think it's time that the people get a simple, renewed, and refined review of this fantastic game, and see if this video could help people answer the question of, should I give Zenless Zone Zero a try in 2025? If you want the TLDR to this, then feel free to skip ahead to this timestamp. Of course, before we proceed, I will be providing spoiler warnings in certain parts of the video where I'll be sort of talking about the story, and that's just in case you really don't want to hear anything about the story just yet and just want to experience things for yourself. Alright, with that out of the way, the name's Leafy, and welcome back to Let's Talk Slow About Games, Zenless Edition. If there ever was a place to start reviewing this game, it would most definitely be the combat and overall gameplay mechanics. Two of the biggest early criticisms regarding this aspect of the game was, number one, the combat is alright for a hack and slash, but it both feels too button mashy and the story enemies are just too easy. Even the hard mode was too easy. And number two, the TV exploration gameplay. There are quite a lot of people who are not a fan of that, since it gets kind of brain-numbing when a lot of the story content relies on this sort of exploration. Let's talk about problem number one first, which is the combat and enemies being too easy. Well, a lot of the issues for this problem stems from two things: the hard difficulty in the story mode still being too easy, and the fact that people have not reached the endgame to see just how strong the enemies can actually become. Funnily enough, these problems didn't exactly need solutions because time eventually showed that both the combat and enemies became progressively harder, or at least a bit more intuitive to face. Hard story mode still mostly being easy for players who put their time in a mostly casual game is something that we see quite often, but even certain bosses in these hard story modes had become quite a meal to chew through. One example, the Twin Dancer boss. And even some game modes can prove to be challenging if you're not careful, such as the Rally Commissions and the Obsidian Commissions. Combat also proved to become a more difficult yet fun challenge when you look at Zenless's other game modes. Shiyu Defense, which is their kind of default entry-level endgame stages, is a good mix of it being challenging for some, while also being a fun mode to really push how well you can both understand the way your team plays and the occasionally unique mechanics you have to employ in order to beat the enemies with more ease and efficiency. However, the game mode that can give combat junkies the shot they really need is one that is part of their game mode named Hollow Zero, specifically the section called the Withering Garden, where you fight through a series of combat rounds against enemies that become progressively more difficult until you finally fight this gigantic flaming sack of ungodly shit that is called Nineveh. Look, you will see people out there who will still say that this girl is too easy. However, for your average casual player, this thing is a bitch to fight even on basic intensity. I consider myself a particularly average player both in terms of skill and build-wise, and this thing is still a pain to fight even if you don't purposely put debuffs on yourself, which is something you can do if you want to torture yourself through an extended period of time of being slapped around, either by Nineveh's etheric heat-seeking missiles, its idiotically huge body, or by hentai tentacles growing from every inch of flooring available around you. So, you wanna challenge yourself and look for difficult content? Feel free to give this donkey a try in max intensity. God knows I'm not gonna be willingly touching that shit anytime soon. If you want to watch a funny and very dramatic attempt at this boss with max intensity, feel free to watch Mr. Poke's video. That shit was hilarious. Version 1.4 have also added Zenless's own version of your typical gacha endless tower stages. If you really want to test your durability and consistency when it comes to your mechanical skills in this game, then this is probably going to be the mode for you. There are targeted stages with goals and such up until level 25, and after you reach and complete that stage, then you get to enter into the Endless Conflict mode, which is just the endless part of the game mode with your opponent practically clumping on more and more steroids as you go through it. 1.4 also added Zenless's own version of Star Rail Simulated Universe expansions that is called The Lost Void. Similar to how Golden Gears work, you go through various domains to increase your character's strength as you fight your way through specialized series of enemies to obtain gears and zonias that preps you for a final battle against the zone's high-value target. It also incorporates a little fun feature from Genshin's Imaginarium Theater where you can walk around and check in on the characters you're using for that run, all while being in the form of your adorable little Bang Boo. The other gameplay problem we needed to talk about was the TV gameplay, specifically the copious amount of them that we go through when we play the story. After huge rounds of complaints, the devs have decided to take out the TV gameplay from the story and instead replace them with the more engaging pseudo-exploration combat rounds that are filled with more character interactions. Which I can see to really be a good move because while I personally didn't mind the TVs, it does get a bit repetitive, especially when you can't afford to skip it due to the story progression. And quite frankly, the new stages that they put in the story now is really fun. And it is admittedly much cooler to see our characters actually physically walking around with the story characters and see them interact in full 3D flow. But fret not, if the TV mechanic looks like something that you can get into, a lot of the other Zenless game modes still incorporate the TV mechanic. The Hollow Zero that I mentioned before, alongside its subsections, still utilizes TV exploration for all of its stages, with the Nineveh level being the exception, as you have the option of just blitzing through it via combat rounds instead. Plenty of events and exploration quests within other parts of the game also still uses that mechanic. So while you may no longer see them appearing in story levels, rest assured there are still plenty of other game modes for you to become a cute small whittle Bang Boo teleporting through CRTs. Alright, now let's shake off the problems and finally talk about all the things that this game has that is just straight up good and fun. And pretty much all the things that I think make it so that this game is worth a try, particularly for those of you who just want to keep things fun and casual. The biggest quality that Zenless has is just the pure fact that this game covers a lot of ground in terms of things you can do, how they present it in the game, and just the overall freedom in what you can want to do. Everything ranging from being a combat nut to someone who just wants to chillax and look at the sprawling city of New Eridu, or even to someone who just wants to play the games within the game, you got it all ready for you to try out. Combat, for all the previous criticism I just mentioned, is insanely snappy, fun, and chaotic in nature. Sure, spamming mouse 1 is a way to do things, but if you want to execute the more exciting and fun combos, you're gonna need to do a bit more than just mindlessly pressing mouse 1 and then pressing E and Q every now and then. Especially now with the fact that your characters now have their own ultimate gauges. Beforehand, this Decibel ultimate mechanic was shared across the team, so only one of your characters can ultimate at a time. Now, everyone can literally cast their ults after one another. And with the flashy graphics that this game has, those epilepsy warnings are definitely much more warranted, more than ever before. Let's even take it out of combat. Are you someone who wants to find immersion through good story and lore? Then going into this game will be such a great timing for you since version 1.4 had just given us a great expansion to the overall lore of the game. But even without it, the previous versions have also done a great job of narrating their exposition through means that are positively engaging. Honestly, the game starting with a guy cussing his heart out at a band of renegades was enough to get me hooked to the story. Just like that.
I'm pissed! And this station's reporter, I can't listen to this anymore! Those criminals need to get...
Our main characters started off as a pair of quirky in their own way siblings who seem to be your ever-reliable, more than meets the eye type of helper that initially only looked like they were in the story due to chance and not by circumstances, only for them to progressively have more and more initial narrative relation to the main lore than we thought. If any of you gacha folks have ever played a game called Counterside, then let me just say this. The main characters sort of have the same vibes as the administrator. And if you know Counterside's story, then you probably know what I mean. And just like Counterside, Zenless is by no means slacking off when it comes to inserting world-building lore in various game modes outside of their stories, so you can also be on the lookout for those bits and pieces as well. And if you're even more interested, you can also look at the lore teasers and even some of the character teasers they've released on their YouTube channel, since those actually provide a decent trove of new Eridu lore as well. However, the highlights of the story don't just stop there. The way they integrated the supporting character factions to the story and how they wove their respective narrative progression with one another is also a great take in how they handle character connections. One character isn't just stuck interacting with people only from their factions or setting, and all the connections that they have with characters from other walks of the story all seem very organically made, and not just made up on the spot to somehow connect them with one another. It gives you both the satisfying surprise of seeing those characters interacting, while also giving you that sort of, yeah, that makes sense kind of feeling. And speaking of the characters, they are the next highlight of this game. When I say that Zenless covered their bases with the characters, I mean they really covered their bases. From your typical street-smart but financially illiterate girl boss to a fox who can slash your existence into oblivion, and to an actual furry servant who is an integral part of high society, you legit have them all. And this game is only like half a year old. Who knows what other type of characters they would eventually add into this game. They also finally presented comedy relief without having to make them dumb as a rock, in the form of a magical girl-obsessed badass cyborg that is Billy. And not only Billy. And it's just not their looks and personalities, their gameplays are all very well thought out, and each character has a mechanic that you have to take into consideration when you want to form a well-chaining combo and an overall solid team. While on the surface, yes, they look like they are more or less physically doing the same thing, but each of them triggers different mechanics that have their uses depending on what sort of team you are building and which characters you are using with one another. And with the various mechanics that display a good range between borderline niche uses and more general uses, people can likely have way more fun chaining up different combos once more variety of characters find their way into the game. It's already so variative now, we can only expect this to grow and be better as time goes on. That's not all you can do with your characters either. If you're one of those people who care about developing bonds with the characters, then with version 1.4, they added a more interactive version of their previous character hangout system. Beforehand, all you do is send them a message, meet up with them, talk for a bit, and then gain some friendship point. Now, you get to do all that, but you can also top it all off by going on a nice leisurely walk with them around town if you want to spend some more extra time. These walks will always be accompanied with special events that certain characters have with certain locations, which just adds to that bit more of depth to the bonding you're doing with them. Raising your friendship level nets you not only gem rewards but also character avatars and a dynamic wallpaper you can then put on your pause screen, just in case you still want to look at them in your downtime. Above all that, most of the major miscellaneous kinks and pain points that came about from the game's launch have pretty much either been rectified or is actively being worked upon. People didn't like the fact that you can only sleep once to change the time in the game. Now they make it so that you can change the time however many times you want. People wanted reserve stamina and they got it within 2 patches. You can now walk around the city with any character you have when you could only do so with select characters beforehand. There are various guides and instruction courses that is now available for you to use in order to be able to better build your characters and to better learn how to use them. And the last aspect about the game that I want to talk about is the graphics. Look, I'll just be straight with you guys. If it ain't for you, then it just ain't for you. For people who prefer the more straightforward anime looks and animation behavior the way games like Genshin and Wuthering Waves have presented themselves, or people who are just more used to hyper-realistic games in general, then the way Zenless carry their far more over-animated and sprightly colored settings is probably not going to be your cup of tea. Just like in a case where you are someone who doesn't like gacha games as a genre just straight out, then Zenless will definitely not be something you enjoy. However, for the people who happen to love animation and graphic styles that goes a bit out of the norm of realism standards and more into the cartoony yet still flashy and epic looking compositions, then Zenless might as well be the game for you. Of course, it should also be said that they have great music to also go along with all the great aesthetics that they have got going around the game. And although, yes, some of you people in the gacha community have probably seen that one Zenless song circulating around.
Flames! Mocktails exercise. The snacks are real nice. Soda's Mix dry. I'm lit, you can't deny.
Please trust me when I say that Zenless has so many other songs that is just much better than that weird piece of brain rot inducing sound. The songs ranging from simple background location themes, to event themes, and to the soundtrack that they have playing and character trailer and teasers are also about as good as it gets when it comes to HoYoverse games, at least for this kind of game setting.
Chief?
It's just another flavor of music that they got to cover with the new aesthetics which they are also newly exploring. And it's just fun to see them incorporate even more color and vibrance to not only the characters we see, but also to the various settings, particle elements, and just the overall interaction between everything with effects in the game. So, if you want a very quick conclusion from me, then there would probably be two answers to the question of, should I give Zenless Zone Zero a try in 2025? The short answer would be, yes. And the long answer would be, hell yes. There are plenty of things to have fun from when it comes to this game, and the point is all about finding out which section of the game would be the one to provide that fun for you. You can go into the game for traditional reasons like, I like the combat, I like the graphics, or I like the story. But the beauty in all of this is that you also have the choice to go into the game for reasons like, I love the silly animations, I like the many bonding choices with the characters, I like furries. You do you, buddy. I have a friend who ended up wanting to try the game out because he wanted to play this digging minigame that's in Zenless's arcade. The reasons are far and wide. Feel free to find yours. Honestly, I just want you guys to look past the whole notion that this game is only made for fan service or that so-called Gooner bait, when there's honestly just about a minuscule amount in the game itself compared to the real outrageous fan service you'd get from games or media nowadays. And actually look at this game for what it can offer. Regardless of what you think their character designs are intended for, a lot of people like their designs, and if you don't like it, well, the world ain't perfect. If all you can fixate about on a character is just to complain about whether or not they have oversized tits, dressed pretty much half naked, or is a literal wolf, things which I'm also personally not too much of a fan of, then you're just not looking hard enough. Yanagi is a confident military analyst who still has massive anxiety over her decisions. Lycan is a respected butler in high New Eridu society with a shady past. Caesar is basically lawfully good Al Capone running the outlaws of the city. Jane is one of the most realistically and psychologically menacing character I've seen from recent gacha games, and Bernice is a dim-wittedly explosive yet ultra-lovable idiot. And a lot of these character thoughts you can find yourself by just playing the game and going through their stories. It'll just be a shame if you skip out on experiencing these things just because you are trying to vehemently maintain a one-sided and, more importantly, an unsubstantiated opinion that the devs are pedos or whatever. And that's about it for this year-end review about Zenless Zone Zero. Hope that it's given you guys a bit more of a clearer picture on what type of game Zenless really is. I honestly hope that more of you would give it a chance, because if you are someone who just wants to sit back and daily drive a casual hack-and-slash game with plenty of engaging side, non-combat content to do, all of which are topped off with great settings and immaculate vibes, then Zenless would probably do a good job with filling that itch for you. If you like this video, then feel free to give it a like, and also feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. We'd love to hear what you guys think about this game, both from those who's played it and those who are still thinking of trying it out. Until the next video, my name's Leafy, and I'll see y'all next time. Sayonara.